Jerry?
Okay, so on that point, first, the applicant ended with a question. Under Idaho law, landowners are not to have no right in continuation of existing zoning. And so there, to the extent there's a claim of any right to develop based on 50-foot wide lot, that changed as soon as the city changed the zoning ordinance to require 60-foot wide lots. If an application didn't exist at the time, then we don't have to consider whether the person had the right. And the Supreme Court's been pretty clear on that. We don't have to worry about that. So we just have a new, we have a lot and a request for a variance. And so we just have nothing to do but walk through the relevant criteria and standards. And as I'm sure you know where I'm going, we can't satisfy the first four, as Rebecca pointed out. Before I mention that, I should note that I think that the character of the neighborhood issue is interesting, and I think it's been somewhat mischaracterized, or at least not fully characterized, and we should at least acknowledge that we are talking about a 100-year-old house on a lot that has existed for almost as long as the city has existed. And to suggest that changing this lot is more consistent with the character of the neighborhood is just kind of odd, given that the character of the neighborhood is, in effect, does include this house. We also should note, looking at the existing map of all the lots, as the applicant pointed out, are kind of all over the map in terms of width. 126 feet, 87 feet, 75 feet, 66 feet, 86 feet, several of 50 feet. So it is, in fact, a diverse neighborhood, and a neighborhood that's been diverse for quite a long time. So I'm not, while I understand the nature of the argument, I think there's two ways to make the same argument, and you can suggest that, in fact, allowing development of this lot would change the character of the existing neighborhood. But that said, as we look at the relevant criteria and standards, I just had it right before me, there are no, we cannot identify any special conditions or circumstances about this lot other than its size, and the mere size is not what has been anticipated by that, as is obvious by the second one, because even if we talk about the size of the lot as being a special condition, enforcing the zoning ordinance does not impose any undue hardship or deprive the property owner of any rights commonly owned by owners of other properties similarly situated. This is a person who has had a house for a long time and has enjoyed that house and has the capacity, even under the existing zoning ordinance, to use that house as it's used, to turn it into a duplex, to tear it down and build 3 townhomes, to build the flag lot. There are all sorts of things that can be done with this lot that keep the landowner from suffering an undue hardship. Number 3, to some extent, doesn't really apply here because there are, again, I don't think any special conditions or circumstances. And number 4, granting the variance does in fact confer a special privilege because you're giving this landowner the capacity to have a lot that's smaller than other undeveloped lots or potentially undeveloped lots. So I totally understand the purpose here and don't have an issue with why the landowner wants to do with what the landowner wants to do, but I don't know how we satisfy the first 4 criteria and standards. I don't think it's possible, given the facts before us.
Well, that's what makes it difficult when you have whatever we have before us, and this is a variance, and our job up here as the board is to be able to satisfy the relevant criteria, and we're not able to do that.
And I should note, again, and I've said this before, and the purpose of the variance provisions is to prevent imposition of the land use code from enacting a takings. It's a fundamental purpose. And that's clearly not the case here. We have a house that exists and can exist and a whole bunch of other uses that are totally legal that don't need our approval. There's no way in which this really would create a takings of the property.
Joe?
I agree with everything Jerry said. Completely. In fact, I think when we go back to the comprehensive plan 2.7.2, I'm actually surprised that the city thinks that this actually is in character of the neighborhood, because that lot, just looking at that lot, it's clear what it is, what it has been historically, and changing it is changing it, especially to try to densify that lot. That's not its purpose. That was never its purpose. And so if you put a 50-foot lot next to it and you build, it's going to have to be an extremely tall house because you'd have to have side yard setbacks. So the very things that she had mentioned, a house behind having to go up rather than out because of the shape of the property, it's 6 1/2 dozen other, whether you create a flag lot and a tall building on the back lot, or a skinny lot with a tall skinny building on the front of the lot, which would be on the west side of that particular house and would completely shadow it. And then we'd have this kind of the same house conditions to the adjacent house that the applicant actually pointed out. So I agree with Jerry.
Yeah.
We can't satisfy these, and there's no rationale to try to satisfy something that just doesn't meet our 5 criteria.
Evan?
If I may, I think in my head I could satisfy number 4, and it's the same argument I've used in the past when people have bought property, owned it for a long time, and there's a change of regulations and things that would affect the value of their property negatively, and then, so I can see in number 4 that because they've owned the property since 1950, a lot of the changes in the code and that have gone does deprive them of some use of this property that they could have expected at the time they bought it, because they didn't perhaps petition this city council to not to take that away from them. To me, doesn't forever remove their right to perhaps develop that property in a way that they expected at the time they bought it. So that's, and I've used that before, and Jerry and I have gone back and forth on it, but I'm only talking about number 4. In my head, I can justify number 4.
Okay. So let's just say for granted that we could justify 4. How about 1, 2, and 3?
Well, even those aren't that big a stretch for me until we start talking about putting 2 duplexes back there. I don't see how that satisfies the retention of the existing character of the neighborhood, because one, of course, is going to be a street front building, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tall. It can be a small single-family home, but the second structure back there, and then the amount of traffic involved to satisfy the normal operations of potentially 2 more families in the back of that lot, then I see that we have negatively, as Joe said, changed the neighborhood. So again, I can see a way to justify splitting that lot off. I can see my way through every one of these, but I would like it to. I wouldn't see it as being a viable thing if we were allowing 2 duplexes on that one lot, because now we've violated what the comprehensive plan, the recent revision of the comprehensive plan, really addressed in a big way, and that is not changing the characters of existing neighborhoods. So I'm stuck because I don't know how it's going to be developed, and I don't know. I agree with Jerry. I don't think you can put a second duplex back there. So in that case, I'm perfectly willing to let them have their lot as they could have in 1951.
No, I didn't say that. They can put a duplex back there.
But not 2 of them.
No, not 2 of them.
That's
But they
what I'm
can
saying.
put 1 back.
Well, one is fine. That's around here. So I'm not against it. And if I felt comfortable in that belief that you could only build it out as it would have been done in 1951 with a single-family home or a duplex facing the street somewhere in that piece, that's fine by me. I think we can justify it. Like I say, they've owned it since 1950, and I'm rolling back the clock. I'm saying, yeah, in 1951, this is allowable.
Evan, is it okay if I ask a question of Rebecca that maybe...
Sure.
So Could you conceivably have two flagpole lots? I mean, this would be horrific, but with two 20-foot rights-of-way next to each other that took up 40 feet on the west side of this parcel that both access 7,000 square foot lots. Could that happen?
So, just to clarify, two driveways into flagpole lots, and then the flags go this way?
No, no.
Exactly.
One would be deeper than the other, and one would be short. You'd have a smaller flag sitting inside of a larger flag. The second flag pole might be too long.
I don't think there's anything against the flagpole lots being located,
In that fashion.
the drives being located right next to each other.
So conceivably they could put two back there, but I'm not sure if it would fit.
Bill? So Kit brought up an interesting part of the discussion. I don't know if you can really use that to justify these things, in that it's approving this because we're based on the fact we're faced with a worse alternative that is allowed. And that is the,
Well,
you know, and
that's. I'll stop. I want to say this about that. We can't, the tough thing about it is you can have all the what ifs in the world. And unfortunately, as I see it, we've got to go through these criteria. And Evan, you may be able to clarify all of them. I can't. I don't know about Mark. I haven't asked him yet, but I'm going to. And so we can't go through the what ifs. What if this would happen, or what if that? Then that's not really what we're supposed to be doing anyway. We're supposed to be focusing on the variance. And
Well, Bill, my point, again, is to emphasize that there are a multitude of existing potential development
Yep.
opportunities right now without a variance,
that's right, that we have not a call on.
which pretty much makes it impossible to grant the variance. I mean, that's the way the system's set up.
Mark?
I can see one possibility of looking at number one, special conditions, and that is the fact that there are three adjacent lots to this property to the west that all have 50-foot widths. If we look at the ones on Logan, there's a half block of lots with 50-foot widths. And none of those are allowed under the current code. So if you stretch that a bit, that's a special condition.
I think you would say those aren't similarly situated lots. I mean, again, so the variances provisions are designed to, when somebody simply cannot develop their lot because of something special about it, steep hillsides, or a creek with creek setbacks, or it was originally just too narrow, and so you can't have the setback requirements. If you couldn't meet the 15-foot combined side yard setback, for example, without a variance. I mean, that's what the variance provisions, they're intended to take a person who otherwise could not, that's the undue hardship point, otherwise could not develop their lot in any way, and allow them to develop it. But it's hard to identify how it's peculiar compared to similarly situated lots, that is, currently buildable lots, and how that creates an undue hardship. I mean, those are the two things. There's no way there's an undue hardship here.
Because they can build something.
They can build
now.
something. Heck, they could build a huge house on that thing. They could, I mean, if the market warranted it, but there's no hardship. They have an existing house that's been there, and they've enjoyed the lot for 113 years. The landowner has enjoyed it for 113 years. Anybody object to my making a motion?
Go ahead.
All right, well, I move for the foregoing reasons. And did you capture like what I said the first time? I can repeat it. That or for the reasons already stated, excuse me, but we can recapture those. That we deny the variance.
I second the motion.
Okay, there's a motion made by Jerry and a second by Joe to deny the variance.
And so the justification for the motion would be basically what I started with, so the comments I made at the beginning.
Okay,
And we'd repeat those, Fran.
Okay, we will start with the voting with Evan.
Nay.
I approve the notion.
I go yes, too.
Yes.
I,
Okay, so you've got 4-1 to disapprove the variance. Jerry, you want to?
Sure.
Yes.
oh, sorry, that was,
That number one, you cannot identify any special circumstances other than its mere size. Even if the size of the lot more special conditions, would not impose undue hardship.
I would, and the first one, other than its large size, rather than, because size, if it's too small, that's clearly a condition that satisfies the variance requirements, but.
And then you said number three doesn't satisfy, and number four doesn't that confer a special privilege to the property over other smaller undeveloped lots.
Yeah, more or less. Does that seem, is the voters in favor, does that satisfy the,
Yeah. Does mine, Joe?
Yes.
so we need a separate motion to approve the,
Yeah, we need to, I guess, so, well, when we deny a variance, we don't have to make a decision on the criteria because it was stated in why we denied it. So the relevant criteria is not effective. It's when you approve.
I
A
know that
variance.
the last variance that was denied, you did do the RCS.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I think they're inherent, they're part of the
Is it-
record,
okay.
but if it's clear, then.
Okay. You want to make a motion for
Yeah,
it?
so the motion would be to approve the recorded justifications for denying the relevant criterion standards as stated by Ann,
And I'll second that as
or as
well.
recorded by Ann.
Okay. We've got the motion by Jerry and the second by Joe. And you got that, Ann? Okay, and we'll start with Jerry.
Aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, 4-1. Okay, that closes the public hearing.